Thanks for reading. Our 7 tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting and declining outside contributions. We will now pass the baskets. This is a weekly step meeting. Our format is as follows. A speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the step of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7. And you can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. And do not forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. That brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting on this day, Monday, January 8th, 2024, in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, on the Monday night, 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Emily, and she'll be sharing her experience on steps 4 and 5. Please help me welcome Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Emily.
Thank you for asking me to speak. Before I speak, I always pray that I'm going to say something useful, so hopefully I do that. A little bit about my story so that I qualify myself. I am a super sick alcoholic. I consider myself a recovered alcoholic, meaning that I've worked the 12 steps, I work with other women, I pray, I feel that I have a relationship with my higher power, and none of those things are things that I ever thought I would say 5 years ago before I came into the rooms. And for me, everything that I have, all of the promises came true. And I say that because I would sit at meetings and judge the person who is speaking and think, I have nothing in common with them. Not saying that I look put together, but I would just look at them and compare myself and be like, they have everything together. I bet all of their bills are on time. And I would just make up all of these stories like my sick alcoholic mind does to take myself out of the running for getting better. And I would say now that I feel like I'm doing okay because I've done everything that people in AA told me to do. But when I came in, I was a hot mess. I was really struggling, and I kept coming around. And I grew up in an alcohol-friendly family, and for a long time I thought, my parents are alcoholics. I know what a real alcoholic is. I am not that. I have a job. I kind of holding things together. I haven't lost a car or a marriage or some of the things that I hear about other people sharing, so I'm different, but I'm going to keep going to this meeting. And the reality was, I hadn't lost my job because I was self-employed. I hadn't lost my marriage because I didn't have any healthy relationships. There was no marriage to lose. I hadn't gotten enough things because I started out so sick that it was very easy for me as a sick alcoholic to say, I'm not one. And the advice that I got was keep coming back, try working the steps. And I was in so much pain and so much discomfort that I noticed when I went to meetings, I would feel just a little bit better. And I heard a lot of people who, if I could set all of my preconceptions of them aside, were saying things that reminded me a lot of how I felt. So I did what they said. I got a sponsor, and really I didn't get her. I didn't work up the courage to ask this person to be my sponsor. There was a woman who kept coming up to me and saying hey, I noticed you're new. Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a sponsor? And I don't think I ever would have asked her to be my sponsor had she not done that. So that's something that's really important to me now. Has nothing to do with the 4th step, but I'll always say it because it's my job as a recovered woman to go up to other new people and ask them if they have a sponsor, because they might not be able to do that in the beginning if they're struggling as much as I was. So I took the suggestions, I got a sponsor, I started working the steps, and I had absolutely no idea what they were about. And I still don't know how it works. A lot of people say that in AA, even though we read how it works. I don't know why answering these questions with another person and reading this book that was written in the 1920s or 1930s, I don't know why that helps me not drink today when there is nothing possible that I could have done. No human power could have stopped me from drinking before that. I have no idea why working the steps and doing this helps me not drink, but I know from experience that it does. So I started working the steps, even though I didn't really think that I was an alcoholic. And by the time I got to step 4, I really was starting to think something was changing. I kept feeling better and better, and that's actually not all the way true. The beginning, I felt horrible. I took away my alcohol and my other forms of alcohol, and I was raw and I was embarrassed and I physically felt terrible. But the meetings would like just relieve me a little bit. Like sometimes I would walk out the same, but I never walked out worse. And it was like that noise and that hamster wheel that was going on in my mind. It would kind of like shut up for 2 seconds while somebody else was talking about their alcoholism. So while like physically I was feeling terrible, I felt like I was starting to get some hope by listening to other people's stories. And once I started to like answer the questions, that's how we worked it. My sponsor and I, like, she gave me questions, she gave me a reading assignment. I would read step 1 and then read the 12 and 12, and then we would talk about it, or sometimes we would read together. And I just kept getting more and more hope, and I was like, maybe I am an alcoholic, because this stuff is working on me. Like, I'm working the steps, I'm not really one of you, but I seem to be feeling better. And step 4, I mean, the thing I was most afraid of was like step 8 and 9. In the beginning, I was like, I'm not doing that. I can't, and my sponsor said, stop, you're not even there. Like, you don't need to be worried about things. Like, you're not ready to do step 8. You're on step 4 or step whatever I was on. So I tried to focus on where I was at. And when it came to step 4, like, did a fearless and searching moral inventory. My job was to follow the instructions as she set them out, and it was really clear in the book now, but at the time, to me, like, none of this made any sense. And she had these charts and grids, and we did them, and I've gotten the chance to rework the steps and rework the steps and rework the steps in the program. And what's become clear to me is, like, when it talks about resentments and fears, they're all like the same they're different sides of the same coin. Like, I learned about myself, for someone who thought that I was really self-assured and knew what I was doing in work and wasn't an alcoholic and had this like very concrete identity. It became very clear to me that I'm afraid of a lot, and I get upset when I don't have the ability to control the things outside of me that I'm really afraid of. And I think that like my survival is based on like what you're gonna take away from me or what I can get for myself, and that in a lot of ways, like, I was just an alcoholic who was super sick and didn't have a good coping mechanism. And the reality was, what I did with all of that fear was essentially drink over it, because I didn't have any other way to exist in the world. When the promises say stuff about like, we will feel at ease and we'll be interested in our fellows and all of that stuff that we hear with the promises coming true, that's what alcohol always did for me, because I was such a feared up person that first drink or that other form of alcohol let me like really let my hair down and feel at ease with the world. And now I'm working the steps with my sponsor, and I'm realizing that everything's scary to me, and I have all this crap built up so that I can play God in my own life. And really, when I looked at it with her, everything I was doing to try to manage my resentments and manage my fear was bringing on those things that I was afraid of happening. But like, that wasn't the point of the 4th step. When I went into it, especially as a newcomer, I had to trust the process, and that what everyone was telling me was going to be true, that this was worth something, that I could trust my sponsor because I didn't trust anyone. I also thought that she was perfect, and if I read her all of my messed up inventory, that she would like go relapse. I thought that she had never heard this stuff before, and that I was super unique. And then, and also too, she wasn't my therapist. It wasn't her job to solve my problems or to make me feel better or anything. It was like me spilling my guts to another alcoholic with God. I didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't believe in God at that point. I was a self-sufficient alcoholic. That came through working the steps. And then I was amazed before I was halfway through. Like, for me at this point, the 4th step, and hopefully I'm not changing the book, because I'm very literal and I don't want to change anything about the book, but what I noticed is like there's a lot of time spent on step 4. And when you do 1, 2, and 3, the book is clear before you start step 4 that this is where the lasting change comes from. Like, if you can get through 4 and 5, you've done a huge chunk of the program. And then 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 and 11 are sort of like smashed in, and then 12 is its own chapter, but like 4 is the meat. And I noticed for me, like, that's where it's stuck. And when I work with other people now, I notice, like, if I can just get them through step 4 and help them do it, they've really got a good shot at making this stuff like stick. And also too, like, in the beginning, the way that I was taught was step 4, like, you better show up with all your stuff written, otherwise, like, you're fired as a sponsor or whatever. And like, I don't know that that's not my practice now. Like, if somebody is struggling, I know people who can't read and have done their inventories. I've worked with people who've had a really hard time understanding the book. Like, it's my job, just like the sponsor who walked up to me and said, do you need help? Even before I knew I needed it, it's my job to do that now in step 4 with other people. It's not like a test. It's not something you have to get perfectly. And I also think one thing that helped me too is, like, I wasn't on trial. It wasn't a confession. That was a big thing because I already felt so bad, and I knew the stuff that I did was bad, and it's my harms and my fears and my resentments. Like, none of it was fun stuff. And there was no, like, hammer that came down on me of like you don't deserve this. The answer that I got was like, we're all sick. This is, you need to be here. And it was funny too, because I told my sponsor about crashing cars and getting fired, and at the end I still didn't think I was an alcoholic. I was like, I'm still not sure. And I remember her being like, I'm not really supposed to give you answers here, but I think you're an alcoholic. After hearing your inventory, it kind of seems like you have something going on. And I agree. And then for me, like, there's stuff I thought I would never, I think to, like, really experience 4 and 5, like, you have to be on the other side of it at some point. So when somebody else trusted me enough to tell me, like, their step 4 and to do that with me, that was amazing. Like, to be in a position of trust where I can actually help someone. And then I ended up, like, because I wanted to, not because I had to, validating them. They're like, I did this horrible thing that I thought I would never tell anyone. And then I got to say as another alcoholic, like, so did I, because I'm super sick too. And this is the kind of stuff that I did before I had a solution also. And I never thought that. I never thought that I would, like, that my dark, broken past and present would be useful to somebody else, but it was. And it wasn't about me. And it's still, not perfect. Like, I can take, as, like, someone who's been around for a little bit, not a long time, but, like, I have a couple years, I can do a 4th and a 5th step, and I can get the results of that and think to myself, like, okay, let me play God harder. Like now I see all of my stuff, and I will lie sometimes, and I'll manipulate, and here's what I do when I'm feared up, and blah, blah, blah. And I'll see it as, like, a to-do list where now I, as a sick and broken alcoholic, try to go fix myself so that I can be perfect. And really, like, that's never going to work. That's just me playing God more. The result of my 4th and 5th step should really be like, wow, I'm a broken person, and I need to pray and have a relationship with God and see how I can be useful, and see how, like, all these resentments are a factor of me being, like, scared or out of control or thinking of myself too much, when I need to start, like, working with other people and being of service, and all of those things are supposed to come out of it. And, like, I'm constantly oscillating between that egotistical, self-centered person who wants to fix everything, including myself, and then the person who's like, this is who I am, I'm a human being, I need to pray and get with it and work my program. So I thought that was really interesting. That was pointed out to me a couple years ago, like, you're doing your 4th step alcoholically. And I guess there's no right way to do it, like being fearless and searching and thorough. I know when I'm being honest, and I know when I'm hiding stuff. And to the hiding stuff effect, I thought in the beginning, like, there's so many times where I blacked out. There's so many times that I didn't know what I was doing. And I kept thinking, like, if I don't write down every harm that I've ever caused or every resentment that I've ever had, I'm going to go relapse. Like, if I don't do this perfectly, I'm going to relapse. And it was also explained to me that that's not necessarily true either. Like denial, someone said like denial or the shock absorbers of the soul. Like if I had remembered every mess up thing that I'd ever done during my first fourth step, I think I would have gone out and drank again, because it was so much and I felt so terrible that I believe it's true when people say like God gives you what you need to work with in the moment. I don't recommend sitting there and like thinking for a year of how to write your inventory. I don't think that that's a good idea at all. Like sitting in that funk, like even when I'm writing a 4-step, I'll like lash out and I'm like not happy. I'm not joyous and free at all. I'm actually like in my head and a little upset, and I try to like get in, write it the best I can, and then do a 5th step and get out. And inventory changes. Like if like they say with a store, if it took a store a year, like the example is in the book, to write the inventory, it wouldn't even be current by the time you finished. So I try to not to make it this impossible game where if I like step on a crack, break my mother's back, like definitely going to relapse, because it's not a trick anymore. Like the world is not out to get me like I thought it was. This is a program that actually works. And when people say, you know, work the steps and it'll work for you, that's true. Like never have I seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed the steps. Always, really always in my experience, I've seen people relapse when they don't work the program. And it wasn't that hard. Sometimes it was boring and painful, but it wasn't hard, especially if you have a sponsor who's willing to like get in the trenches with you. And I feel like salesy being like, you should do your 4th step, you should do your 5th step. But it's true, because I think that's where the meat of the program is, and it's worth just trying and seeing how far you can get with it. And to me, sometimes I hear people are like, oh, you know, I'm gonna wait a couple years before I do the 4th step thing. And I just think like, why wait? You know, all the miracles happen. You will be amazed before you're halfway through. I think when they say before halfway through, they're saying like when you finish your 4th step and you do your 5th step, like that's before halfway, and that's when it starts to really stick. And I think that's working the program. Like meeting makers make it. That's awesome. In the beginning, that's all I could do. Was just show up, listen to people speak. That's the best I could do. But if I had done that for the entire time, I don't know how it would have worked out for me, because I don't think I would have developed a relationship with a higher power. Like there's a book, story in the book that says like, thank God I found AA. And then the guy's like, no, thank AA I found God, because through working the steps I found, and it doesn't have to be the guy in the sky, it doesn't have to be the bearded person. I don't know what that is either. I just know that when I work the steps, all of these weird coincidences start happening, like the job or the house or the thing that I don't get. And it all seems to like match up really well in 2020, where I'm like, oh, okay, somebody's looking out for me. There's something helping me. And I know that's true, because I, based on my behavior and my actions, would be dead. It's undeniable. I would be dead if there weren't a higher power looking out for me, and that's my belief. But I got that relationship through working the steps, and it's really the basis for everything that I do now. I've heard people say at meetings, my husband is running around with our baby right now, and they've been like, oh, you're not gonna drink because you have a baby and husband. I'm like, no, I've heard everybody's story. Like, that's not enough. I love them to death, but that's not enough. And I know that from my parents, and I know that from all my friends in AA. And for me, this is still really life or death. Especially with having the baby. Like, I put my hand up at a meeting a couple weeks ago and was like, I'm not going to enough meetings. I'm a really sick, broken alcoholic who will drink if I don't go to enough meetings. And it's like I have the best excuse and the worst excuse now to not go, but I have to go. I have to prioritize this. I tell people, like, if you're having a problem, like, don't not call me because I have a baby. I need it more now than ever. And I think that's really all I'm going to share. The only other thing that I would say is, like, if you're new, get your hand up, tell people that you're new, even if you haven't worked that step, we still want to hear from you. I do, at least, because I think doing that for me let people know to come talk to me after the meeting. And welcome to everyone who's coming here for the first time. I hope that I said something that was useful, and thank you for asking me to share.
Okay. Please limit your sharing to 3 minutes. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking or if you've had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. And we ask you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are on a church and on a spiritual journey. And now the room is now open for personal sharing. You can select.
Okay.
I'm Jeff, I'm an alcoholic.